He said we never watching these again.
I'm never watching these
Yes,
again,
sir.
bro.
That's what I like to hear.
Shorty wanna ball with the tick. Money sitting tall, y'all mean.
Back with the second one.
This year, John Paul Getty III was the grandson of John Paul Getty II, an oil tycoon who is one of the richest men in the world. In 1973, John Paul Getty II was 16 and living a carefree lifestyle in Rome, where his father was doing business at the time. While the younger Getty was busying himself by doing drugs, selling paintings, and making jewelry, he managed to get himself kidnapped by Italian gangsters. The gangsters told the Getty family that they had to pay $17 million in cash for the return of their son.
What?
But police investigators doubted this was a real kidnapping at first. If anything, they believed that John Paul Getty III had staged his own kidnapping in order to get more money out of his parents. The Getty family decided not to pay the kidnappers anything.
Well, no.
His grandfather even famously said that he would have 15 kidnapped grandchildren later if he paid the ransom for one grandchild now. 3 months later, however, a grisly package made the Gettys change their mind.
They pretty much just don't care about him. Like,
what?
they just don't care.
you got plenty of grandchildren. So.
They finna talk about something about the black market, the deep web.
Bro, that thing crazy.
In this package was a picture of John Paul Getty with his ear missing, along with a lock of his hair and the severed ear itself.
That's not funny, bro.
They also made him write a letter begging his family to pay.
It's not funny, bro.
Eventually, the grandfather agreed to pay $2.2 million instead of $17 million. This was the maximum amount they could give the kidnappers and still write off as a tax break. Ever the businessman, Grandpa Getty let his son, John Paul Getty II, borrow the rest of the ransom money from him at a 4% interest rate. John Getty was eventually returned to his family on December 15th. 5 months later, they found him at an abandoned gas station, bruised.
I didn't mean pause right here, but did they just say they use an interest rate for? So the people that took him in,
no,
acted like a bank.
No. Somebody lent them some money. Alright, keep it going.
I'm sorry, I felt stupid just then, bro.
Starving and shaking. He led a reckless life afterwards and died in 2011 of complications resulting from his long-term drug use. Of the 9 men arrested for his kidnapping, only 2 were convicted. Number 3, beaten, raped, and brainwashed. Patty Hearst is the wealthy daughter of William Randolph Hearst, the former owner of the San Francisco Examiner. On February 4th, 1974, the 19-year-old student was with her fiancé in their Berkeley, California apartment. From that day forward, things would never be the same. At 9 that morning, a large group of men and women kicked in the door and began firing machine guns straight into the air. They beat Patty's fiancé with a wine bottle and gagged her. She could hear her neighbors screaming as she was stuffed into a trunk and taken away. She had been taken by the Symbionese Liberation Army, or SLA for short. They were a left-wing group who wanted to overthrow the government through anarchy and violence, and they felt like Patty Hearst was the perfect target to symbolize their power over the media. They kept Patty in a closet for months, beating and raping her into submission.
What?
During this time, she is completely brainwashed into believing their agenda. Meanwhile, the SLA demanded that her father use his money to feed all of the homeless people in California if he wants to see his daughter ever again. Even though he spends millions to feed hundreds of thousands of people, it was not enough to earn the SLA's approval or his daughter's release. On April 15th, 2 months later, Patty Hearst is seen holding a gun as she robs a bank with other members of the SLA. Her new name is now Tanya, and she is completely loyal to the organization that stole her out of her apartment and severely beat her fiancé. She and the other robbers got away with $10,000. The FBI launches a massive manhunt to find Hearst and stop the SLA. Eventually, they get a break after 2 SLA members tried to steal ammo from a store. Authorities followed their getaway car to an SLA safe house, where a massive firefight ensued and 6 key figures died. For over a year, Patty went on the run with the remaining members of the SLA. During this time, she continued to taunt the police with audio recordings showing her support. Despite a $2 million reward offered by her family, she is not returned. In 1975, Hearst was finally arrested in a San Francisco apartment with other members. She was sentenced to 7 years in prison, but President Carter pardoned her after 2. Overall,
So you telling me you get kidnapped, you get brainwashed, beaten, taken advantage of, and you become a part of them, you rob, and you go to jail.
The SLA considered this kidnapping operation to be one of their greatest achievements. Number 2, the Kidnap Game. This was the name of a game created by 5 kids in Chihuahua, Mexico. Christopher Raimundo Marquez was only 6 when he was invited to collect firewood with neighborhood kids who were between the ages of 12 and 15. They went down to a stream, but instead of collecting wood like they said they would, they changed their mind and told Christopher that they were going to fake a kidnapping instead. They tied Christopher's hand and feet and beat him with a stick covered in thorns. Next, they beat him with stones as they slowly suffocated him with the stick by pressing the thorns into his neck. Once he was finally dead, they stabbed him in the back for good measure. Then they dug a hole with their hands and dumped him in with a dead animal to cover their tracks. They were all found out after one of the boys told his mother. Since 3 of the children are under the age of 14, they are protected from murder charges. The others have been taken to prison. The mother of Christopher has vowed to take her revenge, though she fails to say if she's created a kidnap game of her own. Number 1, child slavery rings. Johnny Gosh was just an ordinary 12-year-old kid on a paper route in West Des Moines, Iowa. On this September day in 1982, a man stops and asks Johnny for directions. There was something about him that didn't seem right. After he leaves, a second car watches Johnny for a bit and then pulls up. 2 men jump out, grab him, and throw him in the back seat. The car peels off, wheels screeching. When the Gosh family receives phone calls from neighbors complaining that Johnny hadn't delivered their paper to them, the father searches the neighborhood for the boy. Instead, he only finds Johnny's abandoned bike, along with a basket full of undelivered newspapers. Johnny's mother, Noreen, contacts the police. Even though there are witnesses who saw Johnny get thrown into the car, the authorities are quick to write the case off as a runaway. The FBI proves to be of no help either. Desperate now, Noreen contacts a series of private detectives to investigate what could have happened. 2 of them, a man named Jim Rothstein and a retired cop named Ted Gunderson, tell her that Johnny has become the victim of an international child exploitation ring. Members of the CIA, FBI, and various politicians are all involved, which is most likely why the case did not go anywhere when reported. There is even some indication of satanic rituals and mind control. Other victims have since been rescued agree with these claims. 6 months after Johnny's disappearance, a woman says that a boy ran at her screaming that his name was Johnny Gosh and that he had been kidnapped. 2 men then grabbed him and took off. Years later, a special dollar bill surfaced. On it was a handwritten message that said, "I'm still alive, Johnny Gosh." Noreen confirmed that it was her son's handwriting. The trail goes dead for a while. Then, in 1997, Noreen is awakened at 2:30 in the morning by urgent knocking. The long-haired man on her doorstep claims to be her son. Only when he shows her a birthmark on his chest does she believe him. He tells her that he can't speak for long and that he is still being hunted, but that he needs her help in bringing down his captors. The visit only lasts for a few hours before he slips away, never to be seen again. More than 10 years later, in 2006, Noreen receives a haunting package from an anonymous source Left on her doorstep are old pictures of her 12-year-old son, Johnny, bound and gagged. In the other pictures, 2 other bound boys are laying on the bed with him. One of them is believed to be Eugene Martin, another paper boy who was kidnapped in the 1980s, shortly after Johnny's disappearance. Police have never confirmed or denied the newest photos as being Johnny. The boy's mother, however, is convinced that someone is still out there with the information she needs. Someone who isn't afraid to let her know that, to them, her son was just another trophy. Before you go, I wanted to tell you about the giveaway.
These stories messed up, bro.
You said we never watching these again?
I'm not watching these
Yes, sir.
again, bro.
That's what I like to hear. No more scary movies for the rest of my life. No more scary videos. It wasn't even scary. It was just disturbing.
Very disturbing, bro.
I guess that's it, huh?
Yeah. I just let y'all know, bro. Be careful out there. Don't get in no trouble. Stay away from it.